A fresh diplomatic storm is unfolding in global politics, and this time it involves three key players: the European Union, Israel, and Ukraine, with Russia at the center of the controversy. The trigger is a single cargo ship, but the consequences could ripple across international trade and wartime alliances and sanctions regimes. The European Union has now warned that it is prepared to impose sanctions on individuals or entities linked to a shipment of Ukrainian grain that Kyiv claims was stolen by Russia and delivered to Israel. This is not just a trade dispute, let me tell you. It is a test of global rules during wartime, and it could redefine how countries are punished for indirectly supporting Russia's war economy. The crisis began when a Russian vessel carrying a large shipment of grain arrived near the Israeli port. Ukrainian officials quickly accused Russia of stealing this grain from territories occupied during the war and exporting it abroad under Russian control. According to reports, Ukraine considers all grain produced in territories seized by Russia. This is why Kyiv reacted strongly, warning that allowing such shipments to enter international markets would legitimize what it calls economic looting during wartime. The European Union stepped into dispute almost immediately. Brussels made it clear that it views the trade of stolen Ukrainian grain as a violation of international sanctions against Russia. EU officials warned that they are ready to sanction anyone involved in facilitating these shipments, including foreign companies, traders, or port authorities. In simple terms, the message from Europe was direct. If you help Russia profit from occupied territories, you could face economic punishment. This reflects the broader strategy of Western countries since 2022, when sanctions were used not just against Russia itself, but any network helping Moscow bypass restrictions. But the story becomes more complicated when Israel enters the picture. Israel has denied wrongdoing and pushed back against Ukraine's accusations. Officials in Tel Aviv have stated that the vessel had not officially entered the port or completed the legal process required for unloading cargo. They also argued that Ukraine has not provided sufficient legal evidence proving that the grain was stolen. At the center of the controversy is a broader pattern that Ukraine claims has been happening for years. Ukrainian authorities say that dozens of shipments of grain from occupied territories have reached international markets since the start of the war. Some investigations suggest that around 30 shipments have already been delivered to Israel since 2023, although Israeli officials dispute these claims. This is significant because stolen grain is not just an economic issue. It is a strategic one too. Agriculture is one of Ukraine's most valuable exports, and losing control of these supplies weakens its wartime economy. To understand why this matters globally, we need to look at the bigger context of the Russia-Ukraine war. Since the invasion began in 2022, Russia has been accused of seizing agricultural resources from occupied regions and selling them abroad. International agreements like the Black Sea Grain Corridor were created to ensure safe exports of legitimate Ukrainian grain. But those arrangements have been repeatedly disrupted by the conflict. Experts say that stolen grain is often mixed with legal shipments, making it extremely difficult to trace its origin once it enters the global supply chain. Now, the European Union's threats of sanctions raises a critical geopolitical question. How far is Europe willing to go to enforce its rule? The EU has already imposed sweeping economic restrictions on Russia, targeting banks, technology exports, and trade worth tens of billions of euros. But sanctioning individuals or businesses linked to Israel would be politically sensitive. Yes, because Israel is not an adversary of Europe. Instead, it is a long-standing partner in trade and security cooperation. And this is why the situation is being watched closely by diplomats around the world. Another important dimension is Israel's delicate balancing act between Russia and Ukraine. Unlike many Western countries, Israel has tried to maintain working relations with both Moscow while also supporting Ukraine diplomatically. This cautious approach is partially driven by security concerns in the Middle East, where Russia has influence in Syria and other regional hotspots. Taking a hard stance against Russia could complicate Israel's strategic calculations in the region. This is why Israel's response to grain dispute is being interpreted not just as a legal decision but as a geopolitical signal too. Now, looking ahead, several possible scenarios could unfold. The European Union could impose targeted sanctions on companies or traders connected to this shipment, sending a strong message in global markets. Israel could launch a formal investigations and block future shipments to avoid a diplomatic fallout, or the dispute could escalate into a broader geopolitical confrontation that would strain relations between Europe and Israel. Each outcome carries risk, particularly at a time when global supply chains and geopolitical alliances are under pressure. In the end, the question is simple but powerful. If stolen resources can be sold without consequences, what does that mean for the global order? The European Union's warning to Israel suggests that the answer may soon be tested, not in theory, but in real-world sanctions that could reshape international relations.